Hi there, my name's Annie and I work for a small business called Gradconsult, and this year we are going to be sponsoring the Queer Student Awards. For me, as a queer student myself, entering the world of work back in 2015, a big concern for me was coming out. Do I do it? When do I do it? How do I do it? And what I realised is that there's no right or wrong way to do this. And to illustrate this, I wanted to share with you some of my coming out stories from over the years. So in my first job, we were asked to come out on the first day. That sounds kind of intense, and it sort of was, but to explain it a little bit more to you, I was part of a really small team, and it was a diversity and inclusion session. So we went around the room and we were asked to say whether we fell into any marginalised groups. At this point, I'd probably come out to about 3 friends, and so it was a terrifying, spur-of-the-moment decision to decide whether I was going to say that I was queer. Luckily for me, the person before me said that he was tentatively LGBT, and that gave me confidence, and I decided to adopt the same wording. I probably wouldn't have normally chosen this kind of formal approach, but I'm really glad I went with it, because from then on in, it was a non-issue. I normally, however, favour the kind of low-key, slip it unnoticed into conversation approach, and so in my next job, I casually mentioned in a kind of doing anything nice this evening conversation that I was going on a date with someone called Sophie, not actually her name, and that was that. And in another job, I was asked to buy a card for a client. Now I went to the shops, there wasn't a great selection, and I ended up getting a Mr. and Mrs. card. Now imagine my mortification when I find out later, luckily before I posted the card, that the couple were gay. So I messaged the team WhatsApp to convey my horror at the mix-up and said something along the lines of, "I'm queer myself, why would I make this assumption?" Now, I don't think straight or cis people always realise the kind of anticipation and anxiety these seemingly offhand comments can cause, whether they're in person, email, messages, because it's something they just don't have to think about. Or the fact that just because I've come out to one colleague doesn't necessarily mean I'm comfy with everyone knowing. For some people, it can be helpful if a work friend or a manager can pass it on to avoid having to have that conversation again and again. But for others, we might want to stay in control of how and when people know. It's a personal decision, and either way is absolutely fine. So in my next job, I moved to a new city where I knew no one, and I wasn't sure how people would react at work. In fact, I'd actually heard some kind of offhand homophobic comments in the corridors, and so I didn't feel totally safe to come out at first. And you should never feel any pressure to come out, but for me, hiding something that other people could talk so naturally about was really hard. Somebody asked me if I had a partner, and I awkwardly said yes, hoping they wouldn't ask me anything more. And the next day they asked me about my boyfriend, and I looked completely blank. In this job too, I broke up with a girlfriend, and I had to come into work the next day, and I couldn't tell anyone, pretend nothing had happened because I couldn't talk about it. It took about a year, but I eventually became comfortable enough with the people in that workplace to tell a couple of colleagues. But in that job, I needed time. I needed time to build up those relationships before I felt safe. And there's never any hurry or obligation to come out. In other workplaces, I've not explicitly come out necessarily, but I am pretty vocal about LGBT+ rights, particularly trans issues, so people do just assume. It isn't your job to change the culture of your organisation, but for me, I tend to use my Twitter account for 2 things: posting about work and posting about LGBT+ news stories. So people shouldn't assume. But it's actually pretty handy sometimes, because it means that I don't have to have those conversations. Sometimes though, I do tie myself in knots about it and worry that I look too queer for a job interview or meeting a new client. But to be completely honest, if they think that me being queer makes me unprofessional, then I probably don't want to be working with them anyway. In all of these scenarios, whether I came out formally or informally or waited until I felt safe or didn't come out at all, the most helpful thing for me has been building a queer community around me, both inside and outside of work, to support me on this journey. And that's why I wanted to share some of these stories with you today. This queer community has been my cheerleaders as I kind of build myself up to a seemingly casual coming out conversation, and my escape when I needed to get away from the cis heteronormativity of some workplaces. There's no right or wrong way to come out, and however you do it, or if you don't do it at all, it shouldn't make a difference to how you're treated at work. And if it does, speak to your line manager or HR, because that's absolutely not okay. But for me, it's made me more comfortable at work, more confident in myself, and it's meant that I've built stronger relationships with my colleagues. All in all, it means I can do a better job, and I'm just happier to be myself.